the Diocese of Little Rock, Arkansas. The story of the faith in this region began with a group of dedicated priests. It came of age under the leadership of fearless bishops who fought to defend the faith against great odds, and carries on today under the leadership of its current apostle, Bishop Anthony Taylor.
My main concern is the spiritual welfare of the people and the flock. And look for ways to encourage people, practice their faith. And my job is just to kind of keep the flock going the direction that Jesus would want it to go.
This is the story of the bishops of America, the shepherds of the past and the shepherds of today, who through their callings and ministry carry the church into the future. It's also the story of their parish, their church, the cathedral. This is The Chair, an exploration of what it means to be an apostle in America. Located in the middle of the great state of Arkansas, Little Rock sits on the picturesque shores of the Arkansas River. The city was named for a small rock formation identified by the first French explorer to reach the area. Today, it is the sea city of the Diocese of Arkansas.
The Diocese of Little Rock comprises the entire state of Arkansas. Originally home to various Native American tribes, such as the Osage, the Cherokee, and others, archaeology in the area has also revealed the presence of massive earthwork mounds, which were noticed by Hernando de Soto, the first European explorer to reach the area. In the years that followed, Arkansas swung back and forth between the French and the Spanish until Napoleon sold the Louisiana Territory to President Thomas Jefferson. While most of the original French and Spanish settlers had been Catholic, increasing migration from the eastern states meant that Protestantism rapidly became the majority religion. By the time of its grant of statehood in 1836, there was only one priest living in the entire state of Arkansas.
The region was on the edge of Catholic colonial missionary activity. Even though Father Marquette was reported to have traveled throughout the region, there was very little missionary activity until the tail end of the 1700s, and very little effort was made to convert native peoples in the region. And indeed, the longest that any priest served in Arkansas before the establishment of the diocese was 8 years. It's believed that the first church established in the diocese was St. Mary's near Pine Bluff in the 1830s. The church was originally built on a barge and later moved onto land. During the 1920s, the exterior of the wooden church was laid over in brick to give it a degree of permanence. And it remains a jewel of a church, with seating for only about 50. But it serves as a reminder of the early Catholic presence in the region and the small Catholic population at the time.
Little Rock was named its own diocese in 1843 by Pope Gregory XVI, and Andrew Byrne is named its first bishop. Bishop Byrne comes from New York City and brings a few other Irish priests with him, and he has this wonderful vision of creating this Irish colony, almost like a utopia for Irish immigrants. He calls over 75 families from Ireland. Their journey over had been plagued by cholera outbreaks and other issues, and when they arrived, they were generally just very disconcerted and discontent about their situation. Arkansas is very different from Ireland. And sadly, Bishop Byrne's ideal village or colony never comes to fruition. Part of that is due to the fact that there's a great anti-Catholic sentiment that's growing in the area with the Know Nothing Party and others. So once again, we find this territory just up against so many obstacles when it comes to instilling the Catholic faith in the area.
He never had more than 10 priests serving in his large diocese. To help advance the work of the church, he invited the Irish Sisters of Mercy to come to the diocese to establish a school, St. Mary's, in Little Rock, which remains the oldest continuously operating educational institution in the state.
Bishop Byrne dies in 1862, and it takes about 5 years for the next bishop to be appointed, Bishop Edward Fitzgerald. He's only 33 years old, the youngest bishop in the country, and he initially refuses the appointment by Pope Pius IX. The Pope gently suggests that he has no choice, and he's told to accept under holy obedience.
It appears, though, that he had a change of heart, and he remained committed to the Diocese of Little Rock for the remainder of his episcopal career, turning down appointments to other larger and more prominent dioceses. His views were not always in line with other bishops in the United States, or even globally. At the First Vatican Council, he was one of the few bishops to vote against the doctrine of papal infallibility, perhaps concerned about how that teaching would be received among his largely Protestant population in Arkansas. He also opposed the U.S. bishop's call in 1884 at the Third Plenary Council of Baltimore for each parish to establish its own school, recognizing that his small frontier diocese lacked the resources to staff its parishes, let alone to establish schools.
Like his predecessor, he worked to recruit Catholic immigrants to the diocese, and the Irish were soon joined by a growing number of German and Polish Catholics who settled in the Arkansas River Valley. But still, the Catholic population of the Diocese of Little Rock remained very small, especially compared to other dioceses in the United States, which were bursting with immigrant Catholics during the late 19th century.
And established what is now Subiaco Abbey. They acquired land from the Arkansas Railroad to establish their monastery and school, and did a great deal of work among the German-speaking population in the region. During the 1910s and 1920s, the diocese struggled under a renewed wave of anti-Catholic nativism, fueled in part by the writings of the populist publisher Tom Watson, and later by the activities of the Klan. This coincided with a period of considerable Catholic growth in the state, particularly around Little Rock, which gave Catholics a much more visible presence in Arkansas.
By 1946, the diocese was home to 9 African-American parishes. These separate African-American parishes became a source of contention during the Civil Rights era, when the diocese looked to integrate. In the wake of these school integration controversies, Bishop Albert Fletcher came out strongly to speak out against segregation. In a 1960 publication entitled An Elementary Catholic Catechism on the Morality of Segregation and Racial Discrimination, he described segregation as immoral, unjust, and uncharitable.
In recent decades, the diocese has faced 2 countervailing trends. On a positive side, the Catholic population has grown steadily as a result of Sunbelt migration and a growing Hispanic presence in the diocese. At the same time, the number of clergy and religious has declined, making it more difficult for the diocese to staff its parishes, schools, and institutions. In response, the diocese has worked to cultivate lay ministry and lay spirituality through groups like Renew International and the Cursillo movement. They've also worked to increase the number of deacons in the diocese in order to ensure sacramental access continues.
There are challenges to ministering here in Arkansas. One of them is that we're very spread out. We have 8 counties without a Catholic church in them, and 34 counties without a resident priest. So it's mission country. However, one strength we have is that we're used to this. And whereas in other parts of the country, they're just now getting their heads around the idea of one priest taking care of 2 communities. And here, that's been our story from the beginning. Of course, one blessing of that is that the people take ownership for their faith in their communities. We have a culture of vocations in this diocese. The Sarah Club has been very supportive of it. We also, our young men are being ordained to serve everybody in our diocese. And so we expect all of our seminarians to be bilingual.
The mother church and spiritual home for all of Arkansas's Catholics is the Cathedral of St. Andrew. Bishop Byrne built the first St. Andrew's Cathedral in 1845, but by the 1870s, it was much too small to accommodate the growing number of Catholics in the city. Bishop Fitzgerald laid down the cornerstone of the new Cathedral of St. Andrew in 1878. It would be completed and consecrated 3 years later.
The Cathedral of St. Andrew in Little Rock, Arkansas has two spires. One is 231 feet, it's the taller of the two, and that spire was completed in 1887. An interesting story about the completion of the tallest spire is that construction was actually put on hold by the bishop while the Masonic temple in town was being constructed, so that the bishop could make sure that the Catholic steeple was the highest point and taller than the Masonic temple and was prominent in the skyline of the city. The interior of the cathedral is completed in southern yellow pine, which is a native wood, and you can actually see exposed timbers in the roof framing, and some of those exposed timbers still have the original gold stenciling from back in the 1800s. The interior finishing of the cathedral includes the 14 Stations of the Cross, which are large in proportion to the size of the cathedral, and that's actually because they were originally meant for the Cathedral of the Holy Name in Chicago, Illinois.
Both Chicago and Little Rock ordered Stations of the Cross from the same manufacturer at the same time, and they got crossed up. And these are the stations that were supposed to be in the cathedral in Chicago. And Chicago got the little ones that were supposed to be in Little Rock. They look a little bit large for this space, don't they? And they had already been installed here in Little Rock by the time that Chicago said, hey, these are a lot smaller than what we expected. And so we ended up with the Chicago's Stations of the Cross, and they put them somewhere else, and they've got some other stations. But these are the stations that were designed for Chicago.
The nave of the Cathedral of St. Andrew is flanked by 12 columns. They're quadrilobe columns, 6 on each side of the nave, and they represent the 12 apostles who hold up and support the church. And on the exterior of the church is one of these apostles, for which the cathedral is named, St. Andrew. There's a monumental statue of St. Andrew just to the side of the entry portal, and behind him there's a large X-shaped cross. It's believed that St. Andrew was martyred in modern-day Greece. Just like his brother, St. Peter, Peter did not feel worthy to be crucified in the same manner as Jesus. St. Andrew also had the same sentiment and was crucified on an X-shaped cross.
I inherited this chair. This is the chair that was the bishop's chair from before my time, so I didn't choose it. I like it. I think it's a good chair. It's not imposing or anything like that. It's understood to be a seat of authority. It represents the authority of the bishop. Of course, kings sit on a throne, and the throne would be a symbol of their authority. I'm glad that this is not called a throne, because I don't see my role as that of ruling it over people in that sense. And a chair would be more what's at the head of the table of a family. That would be a better image for the bishop exercising his authority.
The chair in the Cathedral of St. Andrew symbolizes Bishop Taylor's authority as the Apostle of Little Rock.
I was born in Fort Worth, Texas, and I was raised in Ponca City, Oklahoma, a town in northern Oklahoma. Both of my parents were raised Catholic. One of my grandparents is a convert from Judaism, and one of my other grandparents on the other side is a convert from evangelical Christianity. And so I grew up in a faithful Catholic home, but not a traditional home in that respect. The faith was always a topic of discussion in our family. I went to a combination of Catholic and public schools in Ponca City, and then 2 years at the University of Oklahoma. After that, I entered the seminary for the Archdiocese of Oklahoma City. I was sent to St. Meinrad Seminary in Indiana, where I completed my philosophy and got my bachelor's degree. And then I was sent by the Archbishop to Rome to do my theology. When I was in Rome, I was a student at the Gregorian University and lived at the North American College. I was ordained a priest in my home parish in Ponca City, Oklahoma. I was ordained in August 2nd, 1980. Of course, it was an exciting day. All my family was able to be there. Of course, people that I'd grown up with were there as well. I already knew what my assignment was going to be, and I was looking forward to that. It was just a happy day. I think the part of the ceremony that moved me most was a sense that the Lord was entrusting these people to my care. Of course, not these specific people, but all these people that had come for the ordination, they were part of the Catholics of the diocese, and I was given a role of being a bit of a shepherd. Just the brotherhood of all the priests that were there and the support that I received from them, of course, received all along. Just a real sense that this is what the Lord was calling me to, and it was a good fit. My first assignment was to be the associate at Sacred Heart Parish in Oklahoma City, and with the Spanish language ministry in Clinton and Hinton, Oklahoma. That was added on like a month after I began my first assignment. On alternate weekends, I would have the early masses at Sacred Heart and then drive out to Hinton and Clinton for Spanish Mass. I was the one who founded those Spanish Masses. The parishioners had contacted the Archbishop, made it clear that they needed somebody to come out and begin to minister in Spanish, and the bishop knew I could. Within a month of being ordained, I had founded 2 communities.
As a young priest, Father Taylor continued his studies at Fordham University, receiving his doctorate in 1989 in biblical theology.
After I finished my PhD, I returned to Oklahoma. We had a pastoral ministry program. Of course, I was the vicar for ministries of the diocese, so I was in charge of deacon formation and also the deacons that are already ordained. And we also had a theological studies program run by the diocese, and I taught a few courses in that. We had an English language and a Spanish language track. I had a role regarding the continuing education of the clergy in the diocese as well. So I was vicar for ministries, returning from Fordham in 1988 until 1993. And then I was the founding pastor of St. Monica Parish in Edmond, Oklahoma. Up to that point, I'd not been pastor of a parish at all. And so I found the parish that I was pastor of, and it was a wonderful community. And I was pastor there for 10 years. It was a total stewardship parish, kind of unique in that respect.
In April 2008, Pope Benedict XVI named Taylor the 7th Bishop of the Diocese of Little Rock, Arkansas.
The story of how I found out that I was going to be a bishop is surprising. It was Tuesday of Holy Week, so it was the day of the Chrism Mass in Oklahoma City. And I got a call from Archbishop Sambi on my cell phone, and he said, "This is Archbishop Sambi." And I didn't know who that was. I didn't know the name of the papal nuncio at the time. And he said, "The Holy Father has asked that you become Bishop of Little Rock." I said, "Really? What?" And he said, "Yeah." And what do you say? And I said, "Well, I've always done whatever the church has asked of me, so if that's what he wants, I'll do it." So I went to the personnel board meeting. It was the most useless personnel board meeting you could imagine, because I knew that my parish now was going to be vacant, and it's a hard parish to fill. And the Archbishop was there. I was like 40 minutes late getting there for the meeting, and so he knew that I was going to be getting the call. And I'm never late for anything, so everybody's surprised that I was late for that meeting. So anyway, after the personnel board meeting, we talked about things without really. I knew that it was pretty useless conversation. And then I was able to go back and use that day of recollection to prepare for the Chrism Mass, knowing that the following year I'd be the one that would be receiving the commitment of the priests. And it was a powerful Chrism Mass for me. I see my role as being part of the flock and to encourage people to live their faith and to support the priests. Each of them is going to serve in a way that's unique to them, to support them in their vocation. My main concern is the spiritual welfare of the people and the flock, to look for ways to encourage people in the practice of their faith, to be their cheerleader, you could say. I try to remind myself that, the crozier, you think that the crozier is about me making the flock go where they're supposed to go. The shepherd, generally they took care of sheep on steep slopes, and it was the walking stick to keep the shepherd himself from falling. I try to remind myself that I'm capable of falling, and I need the flock to keep me going in the right direction too. I'm with the flock in this, and I've got a role. Jesus is the shepherd. I'm really more the sheepdog, and he's the one that's leading the flock, and my job is just to kind of keep the flock going the direction that Jesus would want it to go.